Hi everyone, welcome to the Redesigning School Counseling Renewal webinar for first year schools. And the topic of this webinar is visioning. So what we're doing today is we're prepping for the second council meeting. And the focus of this meeting is establishing a vision for the future state of your school and your students and your school counseling program. My name is Sue Reynolds and I am president of the American Student Achievement Institute. So here's today's agenda. We will very briefly do some reviewing. We are going to spend a little bit of time going over how to submit your submissions for us to review. Just as a reminder, this is the first time that we've submitted submissions, asked schools to submit their submissions on a monthly basis. In the past, schools have turned in everything at the very end of the year and not gotten any feedback, written feedback, until the very end on the whole year. This year we're starting something new, which is you'll be asked to submit things as we go each month, and then each month you'll get written feedback from us. The other thing is that if you start getting behind, we will also start sending you reminders that we're waiting for submissions. So just want to go over that in a little bit more depth with you. Then, as always, we'll quickly go through the beliefs in the RSC process, and then most of today will be spent looking at the prep for meeting 2. So we'll walk through the meeting, we'll look at the submissions that you'll submit this month and the rubric items for each, and then we'll quickly look at the online manual page and the online process page. Okay, so that's the agenda. Let's start out with that review. So I do want to talk about the monthly submissions. Some of you have been doing that and it's really been great. We've had good feedback from schools about how nice it is to get feedback as you go instead of turning in everything next June and getting all the feedback at once and then having to do rewrites. And this way you're kind of getting our coaching individually with each school each month. So I think this is really positive. So I wanted to show you how this will work. So when you log in and click on the process page tab, this is the page that will come up. And before we started recording, we went to the process page and I kind of showed you a couple other things on the process page. So what I'd like you to see is that anytime, this is not the one that's specific for your month, this month is just a sample, but the things that we want you to submit will always be in the enter column. So anything that's in here, that's any item that's got a button in the enter column, means that that's something that's going to be submitted this month. And at the end of this presentation, we'll go over what it is that you need to submit this month. Then, before you submit, we'd like you to look at the icon that's in the rubric column. When you submit work to us and Debbie Howell is reviewing it for you, this is actually the rubric that she's going to use to do that review. So it just makes sense that you do an in-house self-review before you send the work to Debbie for her to look at. If you send stuff to us that's really like a train wreck, you haven't done that, it just costs you a whole lot of extra time and it costs us a whole lot of extra time. So to help you be efficient and help us be efficient and to really protect our time and your time, what we suggest is that you make sure that you read the rubric, do a self-review before you submit the work to us. And then the last icon that I wanted to point out today is every month there will be a row that says submission email to, and then Debbie's email address. If you click on that icon that is in the tools column, that will open up instructions for how to send your submission. And here I just want to go over those instructions so that you can ask questions today if there's any issues with this. So what you're going to do is, if you're ready to submit, say, your vision statement this month, you would just send Debbie an email, and in the subject line you would write RSC review. Our commitment is that we provide that review within 48 hours. So when you send that email that says RSC review, that starts our timer. Then we have 48 hours after we receive that email with the RSC review in the subject line. So we'll get right on that, review the work, and get feedback to you within 48 hours. In the body of your email, you need to tell us who you are, so you're going to give your school's name. and then you're going to tell us the exact name of the submission. So if I go back to the process page earlier, let's say that I'm submitting, in this case, the counselor time use log. So I've got that, and I'm ready for Debbie to look at that. What I would want to type in then is, I'd say, Debbie, please review the counselor time use log, or the counselor time use percentages, or the resource action plan. Again, these are not things that are going to apply to you this month, but you'll see this in your month, what you need to submit. So we're going to say in the body of the email, this is Eastern Elementary, please review our vision statement, exactly how it appears on the process page. Okay, then Debbie has 24 hours to review that work, and then I'm going to show you today the submission page. So what will happen is when you submit your first thing to Debbie, she will send you an email back, and in that email it'll say, here is a link to your submission status page. That's specific for your school. And I would bookmark that link so that, because all of your feedback for all of your submissions will be on that page. On that page, for each submission, Debbie's either going to say meets all the rubric items, and so it meets criteria, or if there's something missing or something's not well enough developed, she's going to click needs revision. If she clicks needs revision, she's also going to give you some comments about exactly what needs to be revised. You need to do those revisions and then send Debbie another email and tell her, okay, my vision statement is ready for you to re-review. Make sure you read Debbie's comments, especially if it says needs revision. So here's what it looks like. This is not for your month, this is just a sample. But you can see that when you open up your submission status page after Debbie sends you the link, it will have the due date for whatever the submission is, and then it will have what the submission is, so the name of the submission, the criteria that Debbie's going to be looking at when she reviews your submission, and then the status, and then any comments. So you can see this one is from Clinton Prairie Elementary School. This is their review page, and you can see they've got 4 things in, meets criteria, and they did a great job on putting together their advisory council. So Debbie's giving them a little message with thumbs up, good job. So if we start to see that things are like sliding past due, then we're going to go into nag mode because we want to make sure that you're not leaving everything to the end and then not able to do quality work. So we will be calling with friendly reminders if there's work, and not only reminders, but we'll be asking, are there things that we could help with. So okay, so I wanted to tell you about that. Let me back up. I'm just going to pause for a minute. Are there any questions about how to submit things to Debbie for review? Not hearing anything, not seeing any hands up. Okay, so after you submit something, then check this status page, and Debbie will either tell you, good job, meets criteria, or please revise. Okay, I mentioned a little earlier that we are going to reopen the survey. This isn't a special administration. We are only telling the schools who are participating in these webinars about it. We noted that a lot of our first-year schools, for whatever reason, I actually have never had this happen before, they did not survey last spring. And of course, so much of what we do in RSC is based on that survey data, so we really have to have the survey if you're going to do RSC this year. The 4 schools that are, the 5 schools whose names are on the screen right now are schools that have surveyed, so that we know of. So if your school's name is not there, please, today, at the latest tomorrow, please call Debbie and make arrangements with her to do this special administration of the survey. The survey will be open between October 19th and October 30th, so that gives you 2 weeks to survey the students in your building. But again, remember that all of our RSC is a data-driven process, so we've got to get that survey data in or we'll just be making decisions on hunches rather than data, and we really want that data. So again, if your school's name is not there, please contact Debbie, and we'll make sure that we get you into that special administration of the survey this fall. So, okay. If you have questions with any of this, remember, you can call Debbie, and let me just go ahead and I'll type in. So if you want to jot this down right away, you can. Her email address is howell@asainstitute.org, and her phone number is 812-349-4142. So again, make sure you're calling Debbie if you have any questions or something doesn't make sense. So if you just want further clarification on it. Okay. So that brings us up to beliefs, and again, I'm going to check, make sure we don't have any questions. And I'm assuming that Debbie's answering those. Debbie, is there anything I need to respond to in the questions that you've been answering?
Not yet.
Okay. Jump in if there's something I need to talk about. Okay, so real quick review. Remember that the whole idea of RSC is that we believe that school counseling programs help students make sound choices. I can't emphasize that enough. RSC is all about sound choices in areas that impact academic success. This is just another schematic to show the same thing. We believe that when students participate in sound guidance and counseling programs, they make better choices, and as a result of that, student achievement goes up. So it's all about those student choices. This year, when you are designing the program, we're going to start out with your school's academic goals found in your school improvement plan, and then we're going to say, okay, to meet those goals, what choices do your kids need to make? Do they need to enroll in rigorous classes? Do they need to complete their homework? Do they need to ask for extra help? Do they need to understand their post-secondary options? Do they need to fight less at school? What are the choices that kids need to make in order to realize your school's academic goals? And then, after we know that, then we'll start to design a school counseling program that will help kids make those choices. Part of the program will be focused on addressing students' personal or social needs that are interfering with decision making and making good choices. And then other part of your program will deal with the guidance part, where we're teaching kids knowledge and skills that will help them make good choices. Okay, so this is the design process, and in last spring and over the summer, you put together your steering team, you collected data through the survey, you did self-studies, and you put together your advisory council. And again, if there's any part of that you're behind with, this is the time where you need to start getting caught up. If you get 1 month behind, it's usually not an issue. 2 months behind, we get kind of worried about. We think that we can see that a school's work tends to be less good when they're rushing to do meetings instead of just doing this, slowly, one step each month. So okay, so in September, this last month, you did the first meeting with your advisory council. You did the introduction with your council, and then your council gave you their first input, and that was input around the benefits of school counseling for different populations. So then this month, we're prepping for the second discussion with your advisory council, which is what your vision is, what the council's dream is for kids, for your school, for your school counseling program. So we're painting a picture of the ideal state in this October meeting. Very important meeting because that kind of gets everybody going in the same direction. Then we're going to say, okay, in order to reach that vision, what should our program goals be? And we'll start to define what are all the choices that kids need to make to be successful at your school. So another way to think about that is when a student is successful in your school, what kind of choices do they make? If you're in middle school, what choices do they make in 6th grade, and 7th grade, and 8th grade? So do they choose not to fight? Do they choose to turn in your homework. I mean, there's a gazillion things that kids have to choose to do well in order to be successful in school. So at this meeting, we'll start to define what all those choices are. You may come up with 70 or 80 choices. And then in December, we're going to come back to the council and we're going to say, you know, we agree with you that kids should make all of those choices, but here's the deal. We don't have much time and we don't have much funding. So your council will spend some time talking about how to get you more time or possibly more funding or you know, the things that you need in order to deliver a sound program. And we're going to say to the council, the more time you can get us, the more of those program goals that we listed last month we can really focus on. So at the end of this meeting, we're going to say, okay, let's assume that we're going to expand the resources the way we just planned. Now, how many of those program goals do you think we could tackle as priority goals? For a lot of schools, it's just one. There's one program goal that the council says, okay, let's enable every student in the building to make that one choice. Maybe turning in homework. You know, something pretty powerful that will have a big impact, but we're going to make sure that every single student in the building does it. For most schools, there's 2 or 3 choices that the council comes up with that they want the counselors to really focus on. So then, second semester, we're going to start looking at what gets in the way of kids making those choices. The surveys that you gave last spring or that you might be giving this fall, that's where we're going to get that data from to help us explain why kids aren't making good choices. Once we know the whys, then we can start to design activities to address those whys. So, so we'll come in with the activities. There may be guidance activities to help kids get knowledge and skills. There may be counseling activities to help kids overcome a personal or social problem that's interfering with their ability to make a good choice. Maybe advocacy activities or program management activities. And then that actually is the last meeting of your advisory council in March. And then after that, at the end of the school year, the counselors will start to do their prep. So they'll write guidance lessons, they'll develop a calendar for the coming year that incorporates all those activities, they'll develop individual counselor calendars, and they'll create a budget that they'll need to put this program in place that you've designed. So that'll come right at the end of the year, and that part does not involve your council. Okay, pause real quickly. Any questions? Debbie, jump in if there's any questions.
Yes, Sue, I have a question from Lydia.
Okay.
And she asked if, let me get back to it. With the data, does it matter if our administration has changed since last year? Wouldn't the data indicate things about the school from the previous year that would no longer be true?
So I'm going to answer that 2 ways. One way is that once the program is designed, the program is dictated by your goals and the activities that you have planned. And it really doesn't matter who the principal is or who the counselor is. Once the program is written and developed by the council, then that's what defines what the program is, not the personnel, but the program, the goals and the activities. So it should not matter who the principal is or who the counselor is. We just had another call from a school a couple days ago, and Debbie, we can hear, you might want to mute yourself, we can hear all the typing in the background, sorry. Thank you. But we just had a school where all the counseling staff turned over, and they called and said, what's this thing called Gold Star? And we explained that you had to have a council. The council wrote this program for this year after a data study, and really it's your obligation as the new school counselors to implement the program that the council wrote. So again, it really doesn't matter who the personnel are. That's one of the reasons why we do Gold Star, is because we don't want a program to be dictated by who the counselor is. The program should be dictated by by the data and by the decisions that are made about the data and what the student needs are. So let me answer it that way. Then the other way is, so Lydia, what I would do if I were in your shoes is I'd sit down with my new principal, and I'd say, we are developing this program looking at our data from last year, and from last year's survey, and rather than making any big changes right now, let's honor the process and allow the council to look at that data and make some changes. Now, that said, if there are major changes that have happened, like one scenario I'm thinking about is maybe with your old principal, you were stuck doing a lot of non-program tasks, and this new principal is allowing you to work as a school counselor and do guidance and counseling activities. So there are parts, like on the opportunities data, that you might want to go in and edit some of that. Debbie can show you how to do that. But in terms of surveying the kids, I think I would not want to survey them again. I would just want to explain when we get to the step where you're presenting the data to your council, which won't happen for several months. But I would just explain to the council that some of your data is out of date already, because with your new administration you were able to make some changes, and then explain to them the points where you think that the data is no longer valid. So yeah, so we can talk with you about that individually. That's a really good question. So anything else that comes to mind?
Yes, she has another question. She
Okay.
says, to complete the time study from last year, I'm wondering if I should do a new time study for myself. So
Yeah.
she didn't complete it last year.
Okay, so the time study that you are doing, we want to get in as close to a full year of time use data as possible. So we asked you to start doing that last, I think it was January. So you got a second semester in last year in terms of your time study, and then you're getting a first semester in from this year. So you're getting a year in, but it's going to be from January of last year to January of this year. And then second semester, or close to the second semester, we'll have your council look at that data as they start to talk about time use. So yeah, if you did not, for whatever reason, get started with the time use studies last spring, and do that second semester last year, we definitely want you to start doing it now. You'll just have to, again, when you talk with your council, you'll need to explain to them that data only represents second semester activities, and for a lot of counselors, the first semester time use breakdowns will be a lot different than second semester. For myself, for example, I used to do a lot of group counseling in first semester, but I didn't have time for it when I was meeting with students to talk about course selections and do academic guidance second semester. So my first semester would have been heavy on personal social counseling, where my second semester would have been heavy on academic guidance. So you just have to, anytime that the data is, that there needs to be an explanation with the data, you'll just present the data to your council and then give the explanation. So, okay, good questions. Anything else? Okay, so let's talk about this month's tasks. I'm going to kind of fly through this, although there's a couple parts where I need to kind of slow down and make sure that we have some understanding. So this month we're talking about visioning. And we want to then talk about preparing for this second meeting with your advisory council. So here's what the agenda looks like. You will start out with welcome and introductions. We're estimating about 5 minutes for that. Then you'll do a review of the foundational beliefs and the process. We're estimating about 10 minutes for the review. And then before visioning, we want to have a fairly in-depth discussion and presentation about academic rigor, the rationale for academic rigor, and the rationale for post-secondary. So in this section, this is really important. In this section, we're going to be talking about global economics. We're going to be talking about what kind of academic skills kids need to hold a high skill, high wage job in a global economy. In other words, sometimes we talk about, well, what's a good job out of high school? Well, if students are entering a job where they're earning, minimum wage, and there's no room for a career ladder or growth in income or whatever, that's a job. But if it's, if they're going to have the same job at age 35 or 40 that they had at age, 18 when they graduate from high school, then that's really not the kind of job that we want to prepare kids for. So we really want to talk about the economic development, and then also why it's important to think about education after high school, and that there's all different types of education. Now the reason I'm stressing this is if you do not have someone from economic development on your council, I'd really, really encourage you to do that. When there's someone local that can say, I'm in Paoli, Indiana, but man, oh man, these economic development issues are happening in Paoli, little Paoli, the same way that they're happening in Indianapolis and in Chicago. That's really adds to the rich discussion. So someone from economic development, or somebody from your Chamber of Commerce, or somebody from one of the larger businesses in your community, ideally someone from human resources in a large business, would really add to the discussion there. So if you don't have those folks on your council, I'd add them in before this meeting if you can. I think you'll really get into that discussion. It's probably one of the richest discussions that we have. Okay, so then there's a break, and then we'll come back and we're going to talk about 4 different parts of your vision. What are your core convictions? What do you believe in your heart of hearts about kids, about school, about learning? Then what are the ideal adult practices in your school? What are the ideal student choices that you want kids to make? And then what is your ideal student achievement data? Again, I'll talk about each one of those briefly, but those are the 4 parts of visioning the way that we do it. You will end up with a vision statement, but that statement is not as important as the discussion. So the reason we're coming up with the statement is to have there be a product for this discussion. It's the discussion that's rich, really rich in this meeting. Okay, we've also had a lot of schools where the principal has said, let's make this part of our school improvement council discussion as well, and they've replicated this discussion in their with their school improvement team. So, okay, so here are the handouts. You'll be able to give your council members a packet with a cover page, the agenda that we just looked at, the PowerPoint slides, and then there's 2 activity sheets, the Frederick Douglass Convictions activity sheet and the Personal Vision Brainstorm activity sheet. And then finally, to help people think out of the box, we've also given you a copy of a document that we've written called Elements of High Achieving Schools. It talks about 7 different parts of the school, and we from a literature research, but also from our own experience with our School Improvement Institute, we've been able to tease out these are things that high achieving schools do. And so as you're visioning, your dream school counseling program, this may give you some new ideas, things you've never thought about that, maybe we should be doing that too, because this is what high achieving schools do. So sometimes the counselors will distribute this Elements of High Achieving Schools to their council members ahead of time so they have a chance to read it before they come to the meeting. Okay, then here's the tools that go with the meeting. So you've got the prep for meeting 2, the facilitator notes. Definitely read the facilitator notes for this meeting. There's some resistance that will probably come up in this meeting. And we're going to tell you how to head it off so that it doesn't totally take your meeting sideways. So then there's a couple of facilitation tools. There's a vision brainstorm poster. You've got a sample of what a vision statement will look like when it's finished. Also in this section, we're going to ask you to write a mission statement. Your council will not be involved in that, just you. And it will explain to you how to link that to the vision statement. And give you some guidelines for writing your mission. And then finally, the tasks following meeting 2. Okay, Okay, so now in this meeting, part of the meeting is going to be spent watching a video. So you have a couple of options for getting this video. We talked about this last month, that this was coming up, and but if you haven't done this, you need to get this meeting scheduled and then make arrangements to get this video. So option 1 is to borrow a VHS tape from us. This is actually a 60-minute segment of a school in Harlem that we're going to show it and use it to to practice looking for core convictions. You can borrow a VHS tape from us. 60 Minutes is no longer selling these. It's no longer available. They won't allow us to make copies for you. So we have a few copies that we can distribute, loan to you, and then please send them right back to us. And then the other thing you can do is you can download the video online. We did not put it online because of copyright issues, but we found that other people have. So you can watch part 2 there with somebody put part 1 is somebody uploaded into a Facebook account, and part 2 somebody uploaded into a YouTube account. So you could show it that way as well. I'd make sure like a few days before your meeting that those are still up online. I think the safest way to do this is to find a machine that can show a VHS tape and just borrow it from us. So either way, okay. So make sure you get that. You'll see in a minute how we're going to use that. Okay. So at the end of this month, here are the submissions you're going to do. You'll do a vision statement, and you'll need to read through the criteria, the rubric items real carefully. We talk about, this is a 4-paragraph vision, we talk about what each of the paragraphs should include, then we also talk about how the data is expressed in your vision, and actually it's impossible to do that one wrong because the system prompts you to put it in as percentages. And then we also are talking about what ideal school counselors do in paragraph 2. And one part of this aligns with ASCA's requirements for the RAMP award and Gold Star requirements. So we want to make sure that when you're describing the ideal counselors that you've somehow stated these things. And it is okay, as long as you believe these things, it's okay to just cut and paste these words right into your vision statement that, in your ideal school, the school counselors are addressing students' developmental needs, they're focusing primarily on prevention. It's okay to put those words in just as they're written here, as long as you believe them. Okay, on your mission statement, here's the rubric for the mission. We want to make sure that the mission includes the purpose of school counseling, the tasks that are part of school counseling, and the principles, spelled wrong, that should be PLE, the principles of school counseling. And then the school counseling mission statement is present. And I'm sorry, this is the school counseling mission statement. And then we also have to have a copy of the school mission statement and the district statement. And when Debbie reads all of these, and on behalf of ASCA and Gold Star, we're just making sure that these 3 things are aligned with each other. That the school counseling mission is not something that's totally 100 degrees opposite, 180 degrees opposite of the school's mission. So so we'll be checking for that. Okay, and then in the minutes, same as last month, we want to make sure that the minutes for the council are present. They contain the names of those present and the groups they represent. We will be heavily checking that this time, especially looking to make sure that you have business or economic development or the chamber involved in this discussion. And then also don't forget that we want the minutes to include quotes or ideas that specific people said as they participated in your discussion. That doesn't have to be every person, but if it's 2 or 3 people, that tells everybody that you were listening, you heard, and what you were so impressed by what they said that it even ended up in the minutes. So this is to show your council that you are listening. So okay, so next thing we're going to do is walk through the meeting very quickly, and I just want to make sure, see if we have any questions here. Okay. So let's do the walkthrough, and let me go to the other presentation. Okay, so here's the presentation. Okay, so we're welcoming people, we're going through the agenda, we're going through all the review. We're going through all of that, all review, and then we're going through the different steps. Again, all review. And on this slide, we're talking about the products. And this is, again, this slide is designed to show your council that something good is going to happen from these decisions, or these discussions. There's going to be a product that comes out. So you can tell them, last month you talked about benefits. We now have a benefits statement. I pass it out to everybody to say, thank you so much for your input. That really helped us to develop our benefit statement. And then they can eyeball it and see it. And then you can say, today we're going to work on our vision statement, and you'll be helping us create a vision for the future. So then before we vision, we want to talk about academic rigor. So we're defining academic rigor as the level of achievement that's required for students to be successful at the next educational level. So if you're in an elementary school, you're saying, academic rigor is the level of achievement that it's going to take our third graders to be successful as fourth graders, for our sixth graders to move on and be wildly successful in middle school. If you're in a high school, it's the level of rigor that's required to have kids complete, not only get into, but successfully complete post-secondary. So we're defining what is academic rigor. Then here are some examples. In a middle school, that in elementary schools prepare students to earn A's and B's in Algebra 1 and other courses traditionally taught in the high school but are now taught in the middle school. We're looking at the ideas, what does it take to be high school ready? So for students to be successful in high school, our experience has been that students need to have B's or higher on the report card. I know C's are an average grade, but in terms of doing rigorous work, C's don't always prepare students for academic rigor in the next course in the sequence. So here's the courses that freshmen will be taking. And if they've taken algebra in middle school, so we're preparing, in middle school, we're preparing kids to get B's in these courses in high school. In terms of being high school ready, here's courses, here are courses and how many years that that there needs to be in those courses, and again, what grades we're looking for. I would not leave out, in talking to middle school folks about that, in high school, we want our students to be able to get into an AP class and to earn a 3 or better on an AP test. We really want to make sure that kids are coming out of our middle school ready to go. To be post-secondary ready, we want to help, we want our high schools to prepare students to select an appropriate type of post-secondary education, be an apprenticeship program, 2-year college, 4-year college, career college, military. Select a major to start to learn how to pay for college, how to make sound personal social decisions, and how to succeed in the first year of post-secondary. So in other words, they don't need remediation when they get into their apprenticeship program or their career college or 4-year college. We also want to make sure that they're ready to earn 15 credits per semester so they can finish on time, and again to get B's or better in post-secondary. So when we're talking about academic rigor, that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. To be career ready, we want students to have expertise in these 3 areas. That, we're looking at the post-secondary institutions preparing kids in academic skills, in soft skills, which of course really align with the school counseling curriculum. And then habits of mind. Our students in your buildings, are they being taught to analyze, to interpret, to problem solve, to reason? In schools, be it in an elementary school, middle school, or high school, we're really preparing students to be ready for careers. And so what can we do in 6th grade or in 4th grade or in 9th grade to help students in these areas? So, okay. Also, we want your council to be aware that being career ready also means being proficient in the STEM areas, so science, technology, engineering, and math. So as we start to have a dream for our school and our students, what are we dreaming in these areas? Okay, so then the second thing before we vision, we really want to look at post-secondary ed and is it important or not. If we think it's important, then we're going to dream one way. If we don't think it's important, we'll dream probably a different way. So a couple things about post-secondary is that we know that the more education a student has, the higher their weekly income. So when we're talking about student standard of living, in the future, the more education we can get them, the better standard of living they're going to be able to have if they choose to have that. So the income difference between just a high school diploma and a bachelor's degree, a four-year college degree, is almost $1 million. We're approaching $1 million on that over 42 years worth of working. So, but even the difference between high school and a little bit of education beyond high school, is $160,000. That's a lot of money. So, so this is something that we want your council to be aware of. That so as they're visioning, they're thinking about how important post-secondary ed is. We also know that unemployment goes down with more education. One other thing that I think your business folks will just jump on is looking at keeping high-skilled jobs in the United States. If we're looking at the low-skilled workforce, we know that those jobs are going to go to India and China, where the average wage is below $1 an hour. To keep those low-skilled jobs in the United States, where our average manufacturing wage is $17.20, that's probably just not going to happen. That those businesses are going to move those jobs to other countries. Then, if we look at a high-skilled job, well, the idea is if you were a CEO, where would you send those jobs? We know that on the TIMSS international rank for right now, that China ranks #1, the United States is 9. So if you're looking for high-skilled jobs, where are you going to send those jobs to? We hear over and over again from manufacturers that are involved in our initiatives that they have jobs that are open. They may have a high unemployment rate in their county, but they have open jobs because they can't find skilled workers to fill them. So what they do is they end up sending those jobs to China and other countries where there is that high-skilled workforce. So the other thing to think about is looking at a creative workforce. You may have heard an interview with Putin from Russia just maybe last week, where he was asked, what do you admire the most about the United States? And he said, your creativity. And that's true. It's kind of known that if you want a creative workforce, that United States is where to go. That is true. However, that is changing. We had an opportunity to talk with educators in India, and what they told us was that in their curriculum development, where we're focusing on science, technology, engineering, and math, in India, they're focusing on creativity. In China, they're focusing on creativity. So we're all kind of competing for those high-skilled jobs, and what do we need to do in your elementary school, in our middle school, in our high school to keep those high-skilled jobs in the United States? Again, if you have your business folks and your economic development folks at the table, they are going to make this slide's discussion really, really rich. So, okay. One other thing to think about is that when you have more post-secondary completers in your community, that not only increases the wage of the post-secondary completers, but it also increases the wage of your high school dropouts. So, there's some benefit to even people that don't complete high school when you have more post-secondary completers in your community. So, and then some other things, that people smoke less, they spend more time in education with their children, they vote at a higher rate. So, just lots of other benefits too when your community has more post-secondary completers. I would also emphasize when you're doing this presentation that post-secondary does not just mean four-year college. I would say that right off the bat. That's four-year college. There's 5 different areas: four-year college, two-year college, career college, apprenticeship programs, and military. So 4-year, 2-year, career, apprenticeship, military. And those are all viable post-secondary options, and part of our school counseling program is helping kids decide which is the best option for them. Okay, one other thing in terms of looking at post-secondary is just that I like to point out to people too, is about social justice, that when we're looking at different student groups, the college enrollment tends to be quite different. So if we're looking at income, different income levels, you can see that the students from more affluent families have a more likely chance of getting to post-secondary, and same thing with race and ethnicity, that that there are some racial ethnic groups that if you happen to be born into that race, your chances of going to post-secondary are much greater. So just things to think about as we're talking about post-secondary. Okay, so this month I'm going to try to fly through these. I know we're over time. That this month we're talking about visioning. So a vision is a detailed description of our school's ideal student achievement data and our ideal student and adult practices. So one thing we really want to emphasize is the difference between a vision and a mission. A vision is a detailed description of the ideal world, where a mission is a brief statement that says basically it's the aim of the school to move toward that vision. When we write visions, they're very long. They may be 3, 4, 5 pages long because we're describing every aspect of this ideal school. But the mission statement is usually just one sentence that says, it's the mission of the school to move us toward this dream state. Okay, very important here is the difference between a vision and a goal. Remember that a vision is lofty and bold. It is not based in reality. It's our dream. So, in my dream, I would love to dream that all students take an AP course and they all, get the top score on the AP test. Is that probably going to happen? No. But dreaming is so important. If you can't dream it, you'll never realize it. A goal, on the other hand, is realistic. A goal is a step between the current state and the vision. So in my vision, my dream is that all of my students are going to enroll in AP, take an AP test, and get the highest score on it. And my current data is that only 15% of my kids are doing that. Then my goal might be to move from 15% to 20%. So current state is 15%, goal 20%, vision 100%. Probably will never reach my vision, but if I can't dream it, I'll never work towards that. We started adding visioning in when we saw that there were a lot of schools that as soon as they got above state average, or as soon as they had met a state expectation, they just kind of said, okay, we're done, and we were finished. So we really want to say, no, we're not finished until every single student in the building is successful. Okay, a couple of quotes. You may decide you want to leave these out. Vision without action is just a dream. Action without vision just passes the time. And vision with action is what changes the world. This is the quote where we got our process title from, Vision to Action. Vision by itself is no good. Action without vision is just you're just going in different directions. So, okay. Peter Senge, without vision, there is no reason, without vision, there is no reason to move away from the status quo. Visioning creates discomfort, which results in energy for change. So again, if I'm visioning that I have 100% of all of my students succeeding in AP, and my reality is only 10% are, then if I really believe in that vision, it kind of spurs me to do something about it. So it creates energy. Okay, so visioning, importance of visioning. Practical reasons for visioning: raises expectation, gives us a common purpose and direction, creates energy for change, focuses on the future. That's really energizing. And the next one I really love is that when you're visioning, you're not thinking about the past. So nobody's pointing fingers and saying, well, it's the parents' problem that we're in this state, or it's the elementary's fault that we're here. We don't care about the past. What we care about is the future, where we want to go, and then what everybody's going to do to get us to that future state. It also focuses on what's best for students. We're not going to talk about our dreams for teachers or our dreams for counselors or parents. We're talking about our dreams for kids. And your vision statement will become the foundation for everything that we do in RSC after this step. Everything is about moving towards the vision. So there's 4 steps: core convictions, then we'll describe our ideal adults, ideal students, and ideal achievement data. So let's talk about those core convictions. The convictions are what make us have dreams. So the question that we're going to throw out is, what do we believe that all kids deserve? Here's some examples from past RSC schools. One school said that their council said, we believe that all kids deserve to grow up in a culture of high expectations. Not just some kids, not just the affluent white kids, but every single kid in this building deserves a culture of high expectations. Another school said all kids deserve to master the state educational standards. Not just some kids, not just kids get A's and B's on a report card, but every student deserves to master those standards. All students deserve to continue their education after high school. All students deserve to be engaged in their learning. All kids deserve academic and career guidance. So the question that we're going to look at first is, can we identify people's core convictions by observing their behaviors? And there's an activity that goes with this. So we're telling the council that we're going to watch this video. And while you're watching it, kind of tell, just by watching the behaviors of the teachers and the principal at the school and in Harlem, what they believe in their hearts. What do they believe about kids? What do they believe about learning? What do they believe about education? And you have an activity sheet as you start to think, oh man, they really believe, and then whatever you think they believe, jot it down. So you're not in the video, you're saying to the council, in the video, you're not going to, there's not going to be a screen where the principal says, at Frederick Douglass Academy, we believe that. You're not going to hear that. You're just going to watch their behaviors and see if you can determine what's in their hearts just by watching what they're doing. Okay, so then you're going to show the video. The video lasts about 10 minutes. And you'll see the principal talking about the school, you'll see a couple classroom teachers, you'll see the kids, and it'll be just obvious what they believe. So the next thing you're going to say is, okay, so now we've talked about and the other thing is that after this I'd give people a chance to share. What did you hear? And they'll come up with things like, at Frederick Douglass, they believed that education was for all kids and that education was important and that students all students should be involved in a foreign language. So lots of stuff like that. Okay, so then you're saying, okay, well, so what does our community believe about learning and education? And you're going to there's another activity sheet. It looks just like this one, except it's going to say our convictions at the top. So you're giving people some time to just work quietly. I usually give people 4 minutes. And I just say, just jot down, what do you personally believe in your heart of hearts? So they're working a little bit, and they're jotting those things down. And then I usually interrupt and I say, think about these 7 areas. What do we believe kids deserve in terms of school counseling, our expectations of them, the curriculum we give them, the instruction we provide, all these 7 areas, the extra help we give them. What do kids in our building deserve in these 7 areas? And then I give them a little bit more time to work. So this is called a Delphi consensus building model. And basically, you're giving people time to work individually on their own paper, so no talking, and usually I'll say, can't talk to each other, it's individual work, otherwise discussions will break out. Then we're breaking people into small groups, and we're saying, okay, just chat about this in your small group, what do you think that all kids deserve? And if you'll come up to consensus on a couple of ideas, that would be good. And then the small groups bring their ideas to the large group. And then finally, the consensus question is, can we live with this and support it publicly? So, so we've been discussing core convictions. Now we're going to talk about ideal adult practices. So we're looking at, ideally, what are the adults in our building doing and in our community? What are the ideal teachers doing? What are the ideal administrators doing? Parents, ideal community members. So I like to keep that discussion in present tense. So, and I tell people, just close your eyes. Imagine that you're walking into a classroom. What is a sound teacher doing in this ideal school? And they'll say things like, they're engaging kids, they're turning back homework on time, just they're differentiating their instruction. What are community members doing or parents doing? It's just in our ideal community, what's going on. And again, we're saying, in these areas, so they're thinking about what are the teachers teaching? What is their instruction like? Are they providing extra help? And then again, we're going to do this by consensus. So everybody's working individually about that question, and then we'll go to a small group discussion. So we're breaking everybody into small groups, and they're talking about, what they believe that the ideal adult practices are like, and then we'll have the small groups report out to the large group. Then the discussion is about ideal student practices. So, what kind of choices are students in our ideal school making? They're choosing to come to school, they're choosing to pay attention in class, do their homework, ask questions when they're confused, to respect authority, all the things that ideal students do. So, and again, it's the same consensus building process. So people work individually, then small groups, then large group. And then finally, the last discussion is, okay, if we have this ideal school, what's our ideal student data? So we're looking at these data fields as a minimum. So the percentage of students passing state math test, ideally, what would you like that to be? In the state English test. And then here are some other data fields that we suggest based on data fields that we think are important in high achieving schools. And in your ideal pie in the sky, not based in reality dream, what are the percentages of students that are doing each of those things? Okay, so then same thing, individual, small group discussion, large group discussion. Sometimes I'll jump straight from individual to large group on this because this is a one where I think people go askew, and I want to kind of cut that off. So I might give them 2 or 3 minutes to think individually, and then I'll have a few people report out. And here's what will happen. They'll start to look at this screen, and they'll say, okay, in their dream, 80% of the kids are passing I-STEP math. 80% of the kids are passing I-STEP English in Indiana. And so then somebody else will say 80% in my dream is 100%. Who wouldn't we want to pass those things in our dreams? And sometimes this discussion gets very involved. Sometimes it gets a little ugly. People, are quite opinionated that we can't have dreams for all kids. Ideally, from my perspective, I think it would be nice to have that discussion, that debate a little bit. And hopefully, in my opinion, hopefully the group will think, even though it's maybe not realistic, we would really love it if we had dreams for all kids. And they eventually get to the 100%. You don't want to force that. If the group said 80% and you said, well, that's fine, but we're going to say 100%, you'd really need to defend that position. You want to be careful that the council doesn't feel like you're not listening to them. So I think it's worth the time to debate this and really talk about it. What you can do is you can say, okay, council, you went to 80%, or even within yourself. I can only imagine 80%, vision 80%. Ask yourself or ask the council, who are the kids in the 20% that we don't have dreams for? When we first did this years and years ago, like in 1980, what we had people tell us was that they didn't want to have dreams for African American students because the African American students didn't have as many opportunities, and it would just be frustrating to those kids to have really, really lofty high dreams for them. And so we just weren't going to have dreams for African American kids. And of course, if we didn't have dreams for African American kids, we're not going to put anything in place to enable those students to succeed. So, over the years, we don't hear that anymore, thank goodness. But we've heard that, about free and reduced lunch kids, but we can't have dreams for free and reduced lunch kids because they don't have as many opportunities, and we're just going to make the suicide rate go up and the dropout rate go up if we have high dreams for those kids. And we now hear it a lot about special ed kids, and frequently hear it about kids who are mobile, who jump from school to school. And again, the point we want to make is we have to have dreams for kids, because if we don't, we won't put the things in place that we need to put in place in order to have high achievement in those areas. So our perspective in ASA is that we have dreams for every single kid in the building. Doesn't matter who they are, where they came from. We have to have dreams for all kids, and then we put the things in place that we have to help kids reach those dreams. So again, this could be quite a lively discussion, and I just want to kind of warn you that there will probably be a debate. Another thing you can do to help this discussion is to really emphasize, when this slide comes up, to remind people this is a vision statement, pie in the sky, not based on reality. People tend to get stuck in thinking this is a goal. And if this were a goal, which is realistic, and 15% of your students are passing I-STEP, we wouldn't make 100% be a goal. That's too big of a jump in, immediately. So, but this is visions, pie in the sky. Probably will never get to it, but it's what are we committed to? So, okay. Okay, so that's it. And I am way over in time. I'm going to try to finish up in the next 2 minutes. I want to, though, go to the online system, and let's go to that part in the system. Okay, so I'm creating your vision. I want to just show you and the conducting your advisory council meeting. Remember, you can click here and it goes straight to the manual. On entering the vision statement, on the enter, you can see that for demo school, I've put in part of the vision, just as a sample. So we believe that all students deserve. This would be where you'd put the response to the first brainstorm. So we believe all students deserve to be surrounded by a culture where adults not only hold high expectations for every student, but also clearly convey these expectations to every student in concrete terms. And then the second one, in our ideal school and community, ideal adult practices include, then you just type those in, and then ideal student choices include, what are the kids choosing to do? Might be take a career interest inventory, not hit people when they're mad, to be assertive rather than aggressive, to complete their homework on time. What are all the choices? This is going to kind of lead into goals later. And then finally, on your ideal achievement data, we're writing in the percentage of students, and in this case I already typed this in. This will be blank when you open it up, but you type it in, pass the state math test, or if you're in Indiana, pass I-STEP math, or the Algebra 1 end of course assessment, and then what your vision data is. If you have more data fields, if you need more, you can add additional data fields. Okay, so that's that. Let me go back. So that's entering the vision vision statement. On the mission statement, on the enter, you're going to just put your counseling mission statement here, then your school, and then your district. So just text boxes on that, pretty easy. And then check the rubric items. Enter your minutes, same as last month. That works the same. And then check the rubric items, and then send an email to Debbie. In the manual, I wanted to show you, let me just go over here to the manual. If I scroll down to the vision meeting, the manual, we've got, I wanted to show you the vision sample, so let me open that up. Okay. Oops. Okay, so on the vision statement, you can see from the 4 discussions that you had, there end up being 4 paragraphs. We believe all students deserve, in the school and community where adults are living by their convictions, the adults in the school and community, and then here's the adult practices, here's the student choices, and then here's the achievement data. And again, this will spit out of the system. You don't have to type this after you have all those questions entered. You'll just hit the vision statement report, and that'll spit out. Okay. Then the other thing on the mission statement guidelines, this is in the tools. Open that real quickly. And this is giving you some guidelines on how to write a mission. And then we also created a sample mission. If you like this mission, just use it. Don't feel like you have to reword it. We're good with you copying work that's already done. It saves you some time. But if you don't like the way it's worded, you feel free to tweak it or change it, or just scrap it and come up with your own. You may already have a mission statement for your school counseling program. But do read on your mission statement, does it describe the purpose, the tasks, and the principles of school counseling? Okay, I am way over on time. I apologize. We had great reports this morning or this afternoon, and I think that took a little bit more time than I was anticipating. So, Debbie, anything that has come up that we need to talk about?
Jethro has his hand raised.
Okay. Jethro, you want to unmute yourself and jump in? Jethro? Okay, Jethro, if you can hear me and you want to ask a question, just jump in whenever's convenient for you. One other thing, in the Lorraine Monroe Doctrine, this is where a little bit of resistance might come up. One of the things that they will say in the video, Frederick Douglass Academy is a public school, but you have to apply to go there. And what some folks will say, some people kind of get caught up. They think that we're comparing your school to Frederick Douglass Academy, which is not the purpose of this at all. But you're saying, they'll say, well, yeah, but Frederick Douglass can be like that because the kids had to fill out an application to go there. And then in another part of the video, the principal talks about how teachers have to be maniacs, that to be a good teacher, you really have to be passionate about what you're doing. And so someone might say, at Frederick Douglass, yeah, they were maniacs, but our teachers aren't maniacs. Our teachers have families, they have responsibilities, and a life outside of school. So you might hear these, and they usually always will start with yeah, but. So if you hear the words yeah, but, just listen. That means resistance is going to come next. And then what you can do is, just answer, yeah, that's true. I wouldn't disagree with them because that is true. But then you can explain that the activity we're doing is about defining our mission. So as our vision. So we'll take that into consideration as we're creating our vision. We know that kids didn't have to apply to come to our school, and that our teachers do have a life outside of school. So as we're writing our vision, we'll take that into account. Remember, vision is pie in the sky, and pie in the sky vision is also that we have unlimited energy and unlimited time, unlimited funding. So it's a dream. So we don't want to get caught up with those statements. Another thing you can do as you're setting up the video, I'll usually say, I'll just come out right out and say the purpose of this is not to compare our school to Frederick Douglass Academy. And then I'll joke, I'll say, if 60 Minutes sent a camera crew into our school, they would be able to film wonderful things as well. And then I'd emphasize the purpose of showing you this video is to see if you can tell what's in people's hearts by watching their behaviors. So it's an exercise in that, identifying behaviors or identifying what's in people's hearts by their behaviors. So, okay, I think that's it. Debbie, any other questions?
Nope, I don't see anything else.
Okay, and again, I'm sorry, I know we went really long this time. We walked through the system, and that leaves us finally, before we close, just with our reminder that we believe that school counselors really do make a difference in the lives of young people. It's great work that you guys are doing. It's a wonderful profession to be in because we get to help young people every day. So thank you so much, and again, feel free to call Debbie anytime. Don't worry about any question being silly, or we're here to help. So please, please, please call Debbie when you need help. Okay, thanks so much, and we'll sign off.